Okay. I'd like to call to order the February 22nd virtual regular public meeting of the Highland Park Board of Education. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed and acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News and Star Tribune and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. During this meeting, we ask that all members of the public mute themselves unless they are speaking during a public comment period. If needed, we may mute you ourselves. You may leave your video on or off at your option. If we experience bandwidth issues or believe that limiting video would help, we may do so. We will have 2 public comment periods. If at that time you wish to speak, please raise your blue virtual hand in Zoom and wait for me to call on you. If you cannot raise your virtual hand, or if I miss your virtual hand, please turn on your video camera and raise your actual hand. New Jersey law requires us to inform you that all commenters must behave appropriately. In Highland Park, this means no screaming, obscenities, or any inappropriate video displays. In the event of a speaker's inappropriate behavior, they will be muted and we will come back to them at a later time. If the speaker is the final commenter at the last final comment period, we will invite them to return at our next meeting. Linda, could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Cimarosti?
Here.
Ms. Coleman? Ms. Gowan?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Magaziner?
Here.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Here.
Ms. Bruce?
Here.
Mr. Roslevich?
Here.
Mr. Woodward?
Here.
Okay, now we're on to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we've had 3 communications since the last meeting. We had from Elizabeth Weil Greenberg, we had a letter an email letter on the topic of the Bartle Hybrid Plan. We had a letter on reopening the schools from Mr. Cayley, and we had a letter from Ms. Mataris about the Donors Choose program. So thank you for your communications, those members of the public. So now we go on to approve minutes. So we have virtual public workshop meeting on February 8th and special virtual public meeting on February 15th. So does any board member have any comments on those before we vote?
Do we have a second? A motion?
I'll move those, both of those.
I'll second.
Who was the second? I didn't hear it.
Michelle?
Michelle, thank you. Okay, comments? So if none, we'll do a roll call now. Linda?
Ms. Cimarosti?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Great. So We have a student representative report, so thank you, Polly and Mariana. But neither of them could attend this evening, and I thought it would be nice if we would get board members to read those notes from the different schools into our minutes, and the public could hear it as well, as opposed to just alighting over it. So Darcy, you were going to do the high school, I believe.
Sure. I'm happy to read it. Sorry, I was just checking to make sure I wasn't muted. So at the high school, the National Honor Society is now offering tutoring Wednesdays from 1:45 to 2:45 p.m., not in the morning, and Thursdays during period A. The Zoom link can be found on the Highland Park High School information classroom and in the guidance classrooms. If you have any questions, you can email them to nhs@hpschools.net. And the Key Club is participating in the Trex recycling competition. Trex is a company that recycles plastic bags, including store bags, Ziploc bags, newspaper sleeves, etc., into benches. I love that. I am definitely that person who saves every plastic bag and brings them back to Stop and Shop. So this is right up my alley. I like this. Please drop off recyclables at the high school cafeteria on February 24th and 25th between 1:30 to 3 p.m. And there's an email address, and I'm not quite sure. It looks like it's Jack M. Satone, but it could be Jack Mick. So I'll spell it out. JACKMCITTONE @gmail.com with any questions. And the Highland Park High School robotics team is hosting a virtual coding session for beginners this Thursday, February 25th, from 3 to 5 p.m. And the Zoom session is open to beginner coders, grades 3 to 12. Participants will learn how to use Scratch block coding to make a simple game. And the Zoom link can be found on the Highland Park High School information classroom. And that's it for the high school.
Darcy, thank you. Rob Magaziner, you're going to do the middle school.
Okay. Highland Park Middle School participated in the virtual New Jersey regional, which includes all schools in New Jersey and parts of Pennsylvania and Delaware, of the National Middle School Science Bowl at the Princeton Plasma Physics Lab on Friday, this past Friday, the 19th. Middle school was represented by two teams. I'm not going to read all of the names, but well represented by two teams. Team A placed third overall. We lost second place by just 4 points, one question, elimination round. So a huge congratulations to all participants for their hard work, their commitment, enthusiasm, their spirit, and above all, their love of science that drives them to take risks, continue to compete, and keep improving themselves through the year. Also, there's a note to take a look at the Parliament Press. This is the middle school newspaper. And I'm not sure how we can make the, whether we can make the Parliament Press site available. It's a google.com, it's basically google.com/hpschools.net/the-parliament-press/home. Maybe we can make that available on the website so that people can check it out.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Michelle, you were going to do the Bartle report.
Yes, and I'm going to do it undercover because I want to make sure my audio is good quality. So last week was Random Acts of Kindness Week, and Bartle completed a kindness challenge, Flipgrid, where students recorded the acts of kindness they completed. Bartle completed 105 acts of kindness, probably more, but 105 is pretty good. March 1st to March 5th is Read Across America Week. So Bartle will be celebrating reading across America with diverse books from across the country. We will also be having a Spirit Week that will end with a read-in on Friday. And they have a calendar here. March 1st is dress an outfit that you would wear on an adventure. March 2nd, reading is stylish, dress in a fancy outfit. Wednesday, March 3rd is reading is heroic, so dress like your favorite community hero. March 4th, reading is exercise for your brain, so dress in your favorite workout clothes. And on Friday, March 5th, reading is magic, so Bartle will be dressing like wizards, magicians, or your favorite magical creature. So that it sounds really fun, and I wish we could participate, but we can't. So that's my report.
Thank you, Michelle. And now back to Rob to do the Irving report.
It is my honor to do the Irving report as well. Irving is going to be celebrating the Lunar New Year this week with a read aloud and craft led by our wonderful staff. And this will be another virtual assembly. And Irving is also participating in the Read Across America festivities starting next week. And we look forward to having our students explore diverse authors and cultures, take part in a fun spirit week, and welcome guest readers to share in the love of reading. And Scott, I guess the guest readers will be doing that virtually. I would imagine, not going into the schools.
Absolutely. I'm signed up.
So,
I can tell you firsthand, that's how I'm doing it.
fun. Yeah, I've done that, and it really is a lot of fun to read with the youngest of our students. That's it, Mark.
Thank you, Rob. And I've done it as well, and it's really a lot of fun working with the littlest kids. Okay, so we are on to the superintendent's report now. So Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
And this is my favorite time of the month because it's the second board meeting and we usually spotlight students during this meeting. And we've got two here from Bartle and several faculty and support staff. And of course, our principal, Ms. Knapp, who I would like to bring to the virtual lectern and say a few words about our spotlighted students. I'm going to present a certificate on the screen and then we're going to mail them home to these guys.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I am going to start with our friend Logan because I see him here on the screen. Welcome, Logan. I hope you see all the Bartle staff that is here to support you tonight. You deserve this honor. So I am actually going to read what Mrs. Coppola shared with me when I asked her to spotlight a student because she has summed up Logan perfectly and why we are so proud of him and why he's here tonight. So Ms. Coppola wrote, Logan comes to school each morning with a smile on his face and a friendly good morning to all his teachers and his classmates. Some mornings he gives out friendly compliments, or other times he just shares about his favorite games. I know just the other morning, Logan and I discovered, right? Logan shared that he has a love of 80s music like me and Miss Ducky as well. Logan always has something positive to say. Logan is always eager to come to school, whether it is on Zoom or in person at Bartle. Not only does Logan bring joy to our classroom through his kind interactions, he is an active participant in all academic areas. He loves to add his thinking to all discussions. He participates out loud and in the chat, and sometimes both. He just loves to be heard. His ideas and contributions are always so valuable to all we are learning. As a fifth grader, he is one of the older students in the class, and he sets such a good example for the entire class. His participation, focus, and listening in class is directly related to how well he is performing academically. He completes all his assignments and is a whiz at navigating his Google Classroom, sometimes teaching Ms. Coppola about technology. For example, one day in science, my slides were not working, so Logan shared his slides while I led the class in the daily lesson. Logan completed the slides so all students could follow along. What a proud moment for Logan and for me as his teacher. When asked by Mrs. Knapp to spotlight a student, Logan was the first student to pop into my head. I couldn't think of a better way to let him know how incredibly proud I am of him. Logan is just an amazing kid and brings a big smile to all his teachers' faces. Teaching him is a joy, and watching him grow is even better. So Logan, Mrs. Coppola is very proud of you. I'm very proud of you, and you can see how many teachers and paraprofessionals came here to see you tonight, because we are extremely proud of you and all you're accomplishing. So great job, Logan.
And thank you, Miss Ducky, Miss Kambitsis, Miss Coppola. I see Mr. Gill is here for being here. Thank you. Mr. Presti is here too, all Bartle teachers. Miss Liddick. All right. Wonderful, Logan. Congratulations. So Logan, if you can hear me, you're going to get something in the mail from us. And I hope you put it in a frame and put it on your wall. Okay.
I know you want to.
Now,
I'm so excited.
Miss Knapp, you want to go ahead and introduce our next spotlighted
Yes,
student?
so I don't think Quantaza's here. If she is, if you're here, Quantaza, if you're here. No, I don't see her. Okay, so I'll read anyway. So our other student to spotlight tonight was Quantaza. She is new to Bartle this year and has impressed us so much in the short time she's been with us. She is always prepared and ready to learn, always giving her all in everything she does. When you ask a question, Quantaza's hand is always the first in the air, and she's ready to contribute to any discussion that the class is having. She is extremely kind to everyone in her classroom community. Quantaza is hardworking and perseveres through any challenge. She continues to have a growth mindset and will ask for help whenever she needs it. She never misses an opportunity to join Miss Strasher's office hours to keep her learning going. Her teachers and I are so impressed with the academic progress she has made so far this year. She deserves this honor so much, and keep up the amazing work, Quantaza.
Thank you, Ms. Knapp. And a reminder to anyone who's here, parent, teacher, support staff, these meetings are recorded and posted on our website, usually the morning after a board meeting. So you can come back, Logan, if you want. You can take a look at the video. So Ms. Knapp, thank you for being here. At this time, I'm going to shift gears and make a presentation. So Logan and Ms. Knapp and anybody else who came out for the students, you're welcome to leave if you'd like. We won't be offended. I certainly won't be. Ms. Knapp, you have a busy day ahead again tomorrow because we're on day 3 of in-person instruction and learning since November. So with that, I'm going to now have everybody look at my slides. As I have been doing every month, I would like to provide an update about how things are progressing in our school district right now. Just give me 1 second. There you go. I first want to say, before I tell you the board and the community here what I'll be talking about, I first want to say that I'm very grateful for having a partnership both with the Board of Education right now, and particularly with the HPEA. The president, who's actually here, Keith Presti, and I have been dialoguing almost every day, sometimes 2-3 times a day, by text, by phone, by Zoom, frequently by Zoom, to share concerns and collaborate on ways we can allay people's concerns. And the partnership has really been valuable. And I think the way it's been happening among the board, me and the HPEA is special and extremely helpful. So I had to say that, particularly tonight, because the last few days, as we've been, school days rather, we've been returning our students for the first time to middle and high school since a year ago, have been challenging. And so it's been helpful to have this open dialogue. So tonight, what I want to do is first show you some pictures and then talk a little bit about the pictures that represent how things have been going here for us in the schools since last Tuesday. And then I'm going to present some data, updated data about the numbers of students and personnel who are currently coming in for in-person school and those who are staying home for remote instruction. So Irving is up and running 4 days as it was in the last few weeks of November before we had to close because of community spread. This is a picture of Ms. Gappa's kindergarten room. You can see Ms. Gappa and the other teachers at Irving are still using dividers to protect students, but while at the same time allowing them to see each other. There are a few students in the class, few enough that we can maintain distancing effectively. This is another class at Irving. You can see in this case, we actually have students at round tables. But again, if you look carefully, you can see the divider. It's not plexiglass. It's some kind of a hard plastic that our facilities crew helped some of our teachers fashion. At both Irving and Bartle, this is a picture of Bartle. We have our students lining up, just as they did back in October and November, to wait to be temperature screened. We do take the temperature of all of our students. At the middle and high school, we have, and you're going to see a picture of such in a few slides, we actually have infrared thermometers on tripods, but we found it to be more helpful at Irving and Bartle, also more friendly looking to have our staff actually out there with handheld infrared thermometers. We also have in all of our schools, staff who are verifying that students have completed, or their parents and guardians have completed the health screening forms on Genesis. And if they haven't, we have them step aside and we
Yes.
will usually call home. I'm going to silence somebody. This is a shot of our middle school nurse who is temperature screening one of our students in a vestibule outside the middle school. We have two entranceways at the middle school. We have people stationed at both vestibules for students enter to take their temperatures. Also in our middle and high school in particular, the principals have set up pathways, directional pathways for students and staff to walk down, which are all marked. This is a picture of our middle school hallway just outside our gym. This is a shot of the stairs leading down into the middle school from the teen center area of the high school. Obviously, we're being very mindful of how our students are traveling from class to class. I also want to show you how things have been playing out for the most part at our middle and high school in particular, when it comes to having our students grouped together when they have classes with teachers who are teaching from home. This is a picture of a classroom. It's actually Mr. Carter's science lab. You can see, I think there were a couple of more students to the left. So there are about 5 or 6 students in this class, a few from different classes being taught by teachers from home, supervised by a substitute. We have been able to maintain, for the most part, except in one instance, and that was at our middle school this afternoon. In most instances, small enough numbers that I'm confident we can maintain safety and health because of the numbers of substitutes we've been able to hire. So that when we do have to have our kids supervised, when they're meeting with teachers working from home, they can do so in these small groups. Also at the middle school, we've been able to keep our kids active, particularly in PE. I know we're also running in-person high school physical education. I didn't have a chance to get down there yet, but you can see Mr. McGlynn, Ms. Washington, who are teaching in person, have spread the kids out. Today they were playing volleyball, all separated, obviously in smaller numbers than you would usually find on a volleyball team. And then on occasion, we'll have kids who want to branch out off on their own and play basketball or do something on their own, all being supervised. When I walked into this gym, there couldn't have been more than 2 handfuls of kids today there at the same time. At the high school, when you walk in the entrance, the main entrance, you see Ms. Zimmer and Mr. Brzezowski greeting you. They do the same thing that the Bartle staff member I showed you with the checklist does, and that is to just verify everybody has completed their screening form. If they haven't, they have to complete a form on site. We also check their temperature, of course. The other entranceway is the cafeteria. This is what you see when you first walk in. This is where we have kept at the high school many of the students together who are learning from teachers who were teaching from home. Again, I was in there today, small numbers. There were a few students to the right of me, but this is essentially what we're seeing right now because we've been able to staff spaces with enough substitutes or support staff to maintain those small numbers. I took an over-the-shoulder shot of a student who was in the cafeteria. This is a student who is Zooming along with classmates who were home, with the teacher Zooming from home. It was quiet in the cafeteria. I asked the folks who were supervising if there appeared to be distractions or if the kids could hear each other, and they said no. The headsets certainly help. We provide headsets if students don't have their own. We purchased a number of them over the summer. Meanwhile, I'm making the rounds. I've been doing it every day, and I'm seeing our teachers teaching, and it's not easy. And I didn't realize the framed poster in the background of Mr. Roche's classroom, but it's so pertinent. Our faculty have been working extremely hard. At the middle and high school, it's been very difficult, obviously, to adjust to the new delivery of instruction. You see here, Mr. Roche is setting up one of his two computers. The computer he's on there is the one that he is using to Zoom with his kids, and the other is a computer that's being used to project the presentation that he's putting up on the screen for the two students who were in the classroom. There were two kids in the classroom at the time. I didn't picture them. This is Mr. LaFauci, not related, as far as I know, to the great one in Washington right now. Damien is one of our English teachers, is also showing us here how he has been operating the Zoomer Roomer model. You can see he's got the two computers, one set up with Google Classroom, and then whatever he's going to project. In this case, he wasn't projecting anything, but he could on that computer, which is on the right, project whatever he wants to project on the screen, which is to his right, not pictured here. And then on the left, he's got his kids who are home, who can also be heard using a Bluetooth speaker by the students who were in person. So that's one of the investments that we made about a month and a half ago. Every classroom has a Bluetooth speaker that can allow everybody to hear each other without gathering feedback. Now, there are some technical challenges. I'll point out while I'm sitting on this slide, we have had some internet connectivity issues, particularly at the high school. I spoke to Dr. Nikosia this afternoon. I've also been in touch with Mr. Gardner, who's one of our main IT people, and Mr. Lassiter, of course. We don't seem to be having internet connectivity issues at the middle school. It appears to be isolated at the high school. We believe one of the main problems is the default for Zoom's recent upgrade has everybody streaming in high definition, which is not necessarily necessary for our sake. So we're going to be starting tomorrow adjusting all the defaults so they are streaming in SD, standard definition, not high definition. We believe we'll save bandwidth in that area. We also noticed one or two teachers who are using certain media to stream on their computers that are becoming bandwidth hogs. They're sucking a lot of bandwidth from the total stream. Now, if necessary, we will upgrade our bandwidth capability, and it's not something that requires somebody to come out and put more cable down and then flip switches. It's just a matter of working that out through software. But we're going to troubleshoot the few things that we believe are causing problems before we go that next step. This is a picture of the students who were in Mr. LaFauci's class while he was also teaching kids at home. So let me transition now to sharing some data with everybody. I did share this information with the board and the community back in October. Things have changed since then. Right now, and by the way, board members, this file is in PDF format in the board drive in the superintendent's folder. So you can document, you can note on your own all the numbers I'm sharing, but if you want to take a closer look, you can. Of course, anybody in the audience who would like a copy can just email me and I'll be glad to share it with them. Right now at Irving, you can see the numbers. I'm not going to repeat what you're seeing. Just try to keep in mind that everything you see in red for the next several slides represents people, students, or personnel who are now in person. I'm going to share demographic data as well. So I'm going to sit on each slide for about 30 seconds.
Scott, hi.
Bartle?
Scott, I'm sorry. Would you
Yeah.
mind just reading off the data just in case people who are not able to?
Oh, sure. Okay, no problem.
Access?
So at Irving, we have 149 students who are learning remotely and 97 who are in person. 21 of our staff, faculty are working remotely, and 28
Do
are
you want to see the
working in
meeting or
person.
no?
Oh, no. I have to mute Spotnik. At Bartle?
Scott, could I just suggest that maybe before you put this out for the public, or if you could do a quick update, I think percentages would be so much more helpful than the raw numbers. It would really give a better
Okay.
sense.
Okay. I'll
I mean,
update the
both on there
document
would
and then
be
I'll
fine. I think both
I'll
would be fine,
re-upload it.
but yeah, leaving the raw data would be fine, but I think adding the percentages would give
Okay.
a clearer picture. Because I
Sure, I
found
can do
myself
that,
like calculating, okay, that's a total of 400, and then doing the work myself.
Will do. And then I'll re-upload to the agenda folder tomorrow. And I think what I'll do is I'll just post on Facebook my presentation, since there's so much data here. So that way any parent, guardian who wants to get hold of it can. At Bartle, we have 261 students who are learning remotely and 177 who are in person. We have 45 staff, faculty who are working remotely, and 44 who are working in person at Bartle. At the middle school, 263 of our students are learning remotely. 101 are learning in person. We have 28 staff faculty working remotely at the middle school and 14 staff faculty working in person. And at the high school, this will be the last slide of general data I show you, and then I'm going to get into demographic information. At the high school, 342 students are learning remotely and 135 are coming in person. 30 staff faculty at the high school are working remotely, 33 are in person. Okay. So Darcy, I'm not sure if I'm going to put percentages in here because it gets tricky since there's so many moving parts. But I'll play around, see where I can take it.
Yeah, I think actually that's where it would be most important. You can probably put them underneath. Anyway.
Monique, I don't think I'd rather not read all this data. It's a lot. I'm afraid I'm going to.
Well,
It may not add
I
to
think
100%. They're going to add to beyond 100% also. So percentages, sure.
Yeah.
No.
What? Okay, well, we do need to be able to provide this content in an accessible format. And I think just by posting it on your Facebook page won't be sufficient because the information is, I believe, a graph that hasn't been labeled. So if you're not going to do that now, we'll need to make sure we do that when you do make it accessible to the public. But ideally, yeah, if it were accessible now, that would be helpful.
Okay, so we'll do. And if after I upload it, Monique, you don't think it's accessible enough, I'll signal you that I've updated it and we'll go from there and see if you think there's more work to be done.
I mean, we may have family members watching now who are visually impaired. It might be a good idea to at least sort of summarize, like,
Well,
we can see.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we don't go 38, 43, 92, 64, because we do have families in the district. that have visual
Okay,
disabilities.
And if they're not watching it now, they may watch it later. So again, the point is just not to skim
okay, so
over.
I'm getting different signals from everybody, and it will be helpful if you indicate what exactly you'd like me to do. That would be helpful.
I would like you just to read off the numbers if possible, even if they don't add up,
Then I'll
just
do that.
make the data
That's fine.
accessible. That would be great.
So at Irving, when you break down the number of students who are at home or in person, you can see we have quite a few Asian students who are staying home. We have 48 students who are currently home at Irving, and 6 who are coming in person. We have an even number of Black students who are learning at home and those coming in person, 12 remote, 12 in person. Among our Caucasian students, 38 are learning remotely, 49 in person. You can see that there are only 2 categories, demographic categories of students in which we have more of them coming in person than we do remote. Those are our Caucasian students and our special ed students. Among our English language learning population, 34 students are learning remotely and 14 in person. 35 Hispanic students are learning remotely and 24 are in person. And as I said earlier, we do have more special ed students coming in. We have 19 students at Irving coming in who are special education classified, and then 17 students who are learning remotely. And among our low-income students, those are students who qualify for free and reduced meals. 47 are learning from home, 37 are coming in person. I'll provide percentages as well when I update the document. Ann?
Oh, just thanks for reading that off.
Okay, so at Bartle, we look at our demographics. We have also more Asian students learning from home, 70 total. 30 are coming in person. The difference here is not as great as we see in Irving. Among our Black students, we do see a difference in the number of students here versus at Irving, at Bartle versus at Irving, who are coming in person versus remote. 50 Black students at Bartle are learning remotely, 19 are coming in person. Among our Caucasian population, 73 students are learning from home, 82 are coming in person. Of our English language learners, 18 are remote, 14 in person. Hispanic students, 58 are remote learners, 40 are in-person learners. And at Bartle, we have fewer special education students coming in person, which isn't the case at Irving than we do at Irving. We have 50 students, special education classified, coming in person versus 57 at Bartle who are learning from home. And among our low-income population, 47 students are learning remotely and 37 are coming in person. The middle school and the high school numbers are quite different in terms of comparing remote and in-person students when you break them down demographically than what we see at our elementary level. At the middle school, we have a great number of Asian students who are learning from home, 64. Only 8 are in person. Among our Black population at the middle school, 30 students are learning from home, 11 in person. 91 of our Caucasian students are learning from home, 58 students are in person. 9 of our English language learners are home, learning remotely, and 5 are coming in person. And our Hispanic population also shows a great difference in the number of kids who are in and out versus remote. We have 65 students, Hispanic students, who are learning remotely and 18 who are coming in person. Among our special ed population, 52 are learning from home and 20 are coming in person. And our low-income student population has us looking at 73 kids learning from home and 21 coming in person. And finally, the last slide I have that includes demographic data. At the high school, 91 Asian students are learning remotely, 13 are coming in. 36 of our Black students are learning remotely, 16 are in person. 106 Caucasian students are learning from home, 67 are coming in. So that's something we don't see at the other schools. 15 English language learners are coming in, are staying home to learn. 14, just one fewer, coming in person. 89 of our high school Hispanic students are learning from home, and then 32 are coming in person. Among our special ed population, 52 students are learning remotely and 20 are in person. And finally, in our low income demographic, 56 students are learning from home and 30 have come in person. I'll just show a couple of more slides and then of course open up for questions, discussion. I thought I would just share a couple of comments I received. Obviously, we have parents who are excited about bringing their kids in person. I haven't gotten any emails from parents or guardians who've expressed concerns, except that they would like to see us expand the number of days we are bringing our kids in as best we can. And my response to those folks has been, I'm working on it, something that I'm working with the principals on. The only challenges I see that would prevent me from expanding our options to either 4 days to 5 days at Irving or the cohort models at Bartle Middle and High School would be, one, local community spread, local infection rate, which is coming down, thankfully, and two, numbers of students we see after a couple of weeks of being back in person who are actually coming in person. But it's something that I'm looking at, but not prepared to do yet. I did have a chance to meet with my superintendent's cabinet. The board may recall that I meet with a group of high school students, 2 from each grade level, who represent different circles, different social circles, different demographic circles. And I asked them how things are going, and this is what one of the in-person kids told me. And I had 3 students who were home who shared this.
Do you want me to just read this aloud, Scott? I can read it.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'll do that. Let me go back. Forgive me. So the in-person student said, quote, "It was good when I asked how things played out. This was one day of in-person school last Tuesday. I liked it. Some trouble with Zoom. One of the classes had a problem with the Bluetooth speaker. Working out the kinks on that day. And then I had 3 students in my superintendent's group who were home, and they said, quote, it's a little harder to hear the teachers when they're talking to students in person, but didn't notice too much of a difference. One teacher had a connection problem. Otherwise, normal instruction, wasn't a difference at all. Sometimes teachers had a challenge paying attention to both groups of students at the same time, which I think is a natural challenge that somebody who's new at teaching Rubers and Zubers would have. So that's what I have to share. As I said earlier, I will heed your advice, board members, and update the documents and post them on Facebook with percentages, as well as re-upload the document to the board folder, agenda folder. Questions, comments? Of course, if I can't answer your questions, I'll get back to you. Darcy?
Just a super quick one. Can you double check those special ed numbers at Bartle? They seem huge. It was like over 100 kids. That would be like a 25% special ed rate at Bartle, which seems off.
I could include our speech students too. Just let me double check that though.
Yeah, it just seems dramatically higher than the other schools. So.
All right. Well, tell you what, I'll look at that later as I'm updating the doc and go from there. Let me just make a note.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean no.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. I see there are 4 other hands on the board. Mark, do you mind if I call people, or would you like to do that?
Please do.
Okay. I'm just going to go in order of how I see you all from left to right. That would be Ann. And it's actually the leadership pecking order, Ann being the vice president. Go ahead, Ann.
Sorry about that, whoever got skipped over for a minute. First of all, I just wanted to say shout out to our teachers for managing the Roomers and Zoomers thing at the high school, middle school, really, really, really hard, I'm sure. And shout out to our remote learners at the middle school and high school who are having to be a little patient with our teachers as they go back and forth. I mean, one thing I'll say is I'm so glad we're back. It is a little bit of a hardship for the remote learners though, because now they have a teacher whose attention is shifting between two groups. So that's tough. That's tough. And I appreciate people's patience as we work it out. What I did want to say, I just wanted to express my hope that we will be able to move soon to a 4 or 5 day a week model at Irving and Bartle. I wonder if it would make sense to survey parents and see if the numbers are likely to remain the same once we move away from a hybrid. In other words, once we go to 4 or 5 days, it may be that more people are like, yeah, I want to come in too, which would make it perhaps impossible to come in and social distance.
Yeah, I have to remind the board and the community my position on that, what could be a challenge, a real problem that I pointed out back in October, probably October, late September. I would not be able to grant requests to now switch in-person virtual. Well, virtual would be no problem if somebody wants to come out of in-person, but to in-person instruction quite as easily as I would have liked to, because I would be concerned about that vicious cycle that could drive up our numbers in person. I do, however, have a list that I've kept of people who have asked if they could move their kids back in person if we were to expand to 5 days or 4 days or 5 days at Bartle. And we did not rank, but rather sequence the order of the emails according to when we received them as best as possible. And so we would go to that list first.
That would be great. Yeah, I mean, there I feel less sort of compunction about pushing towards a move to in-person because we're not, at those lower grades, we're not sort of imposing this hardship on the remote students, because we have all remote teachers with all remote students and all in-person teachers with all in-person students. So, whatever you can do, I personally will really appreciate. Thanks, Scott.
I do, Darcy, before I get to Michelle, Chris, and Marilyn, so Jen must still be here, or she was listening. Yes, she is here. She texted me that we have 99 special ed students at Bartle, which means I'm about 8 off because the data showed a total of 107. So I had to check those numbers. Michelle?
Hi, I'm going to shut my video off to make sure the audio is decent. I don't know if we can get this information, but is there any way that we can find out why so many more Caucasian and not free and reduced lunch families are choosing in a remote situation? I don't know if that's, I mean, to me, that just jumped out at every single level, because I think that has been the thing that most people have seemed to be the most upset about, is that we are denying, students who most need an education. Well, I don't know how they phrased it, but it was something like, students who are in the most need are being denied what we have to offer at the district. So it looks to me like those numbers do not support that. And I would be so curious to hear more whenever it becomes available.
I am too. Michelle, I'm giving zero because I started collecting these numbers last Tuesday or Wednesday. And as I was getting them and I was putting them in the charts over the weekend, I was thinking similar things as you are. And I also want to know why are so many more Asian students at the high school not coming in as are maybe at the lower grades? And the only way right now I can think of, and I'm just early in my thinking about this process, how to focus on this matter. The only way I can get that information is if I conduct a survey, an anonymous survey, but ask people to identify themselves by demographic, and then do some correlating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else you would do it, but I do know that some of the parents that I've reached out to that I know are, you know, both, I guess, in the category of struggling financially, and I guess in all races, you know, they don't seem to be trusting the institutions, and everything I've read too. They don't seem to have a level of trust with the institutions available locally, at the state level, and federally. So none of these numbers were surprising to me from everything that I've been reading and hearing from friends and family. But it's just kind of interesting because that kind of pressure that we've heard as a board from the community has been kind of giving us a different narrative. So I would just like us to keep our eye on that and see if we could figure that out before deciding what that means.
And if I do go forward with a survey or some other way to collect data to flesh out what the numbers show, then I'll share with the board and the community as soon as possible. I promise you that. Chris?
Yeah, thanks. So last week, the board passed a resolution asking the governor to prioritize vaccinations for K-12 educators. It would be great if that, you know, would happen, obviously. But, you know, I'm just wondering, some high-risk people are getting vaccinated anyway. Is that changing the accommodations? Are we seeing accommodations come down as a result of vaccinations that are happening?
Not yet, but I have already connected with a few people, 2, 3, one this afternoon, who are close to getting their second dose, and we're making plans to bring those individuals in. So yeah, I guess suppose, but not en masse. I suspect that when I am assured that there is a real infiltration of the vaccine among the education community, maybe that's April, maybe that's May, there'd be a point at which I would have to bring the vast majority of personnel back.
Okay.
Marilyn?
You
You're
muted,
muted,
Marilyn.
Marilyn.
No, sorry.
It's okay. Happens to all of us.
Know that by now after all these months. So Irving and Bartle are still, teachers are only teaching either remote or in person, right? And middle school, high school, they're teaching both.
Correct.
At this point? Okay. So when the teachers are home in Irving Bartle, the ones that are teaching remotely, how many of them are there because their students are there? Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're requesting to be home, but in fact, somebody has to be teaching these classes remotely because you have a, you know, a percentage.
I don't have that data, and of course I can get back to you on that by simply looking at the number of teachers down there, but I can get back to you by email later or tomorrow. But I don't recall, I recall at some point we actually had to ask for volunteers to work from home to accommodate the numbers of students. So it's to me, I would venture to say it's more teachers who don't need accommodations than not, who are working at home right now, but I'll get the numbers to you.
Okay, it was just curious. And so parents at this point can or cannot request to go in person. At this point, they kind of go on a list. Is that what happens?
Right now, we have put a hold on requests to come in person. But as I pointed out earlier to Ann, you know, there's going to come a point probably in the next few weeks when we make some decisions about expanding the program. This is all assuming that the numbers continue to go down locally, infection rate numbers, and that our class sizes are still in a good place.
Okay, my other thought when you were talking about collecting data for the particular groups that Michelle was talking about, surveys probably are not that affected with that population. I mean, I wonder if making some random, not random phone calls to a sampling of those groups where might get us more information than surveys. Surveys are
like a random sample.
Yeah, if they were, I don't know who would do those calls, counselors or administrators or somebody who, or secretary, just to kind of get a sense of what people are thinking and why, and if it's distrust, like Michelle was saying, or there's other issues like that maybe are not even so why they're not so connected to the school and why they don't consider coming in. Just
perhaps we can do both. First, we can conduct a large survey, and then we can hone in on a couple of individuals who might be willing to talk with us.
Give us a little more information. Okay. My last thought was thank you for the transparency. It's really helpful to
put all that information out. Appreciate that you do
No
that.
problem. I'll try to make it more clear and accessible. Forgive me for that. I'll do better. Other questions, comments?
I
concerns?
wanted to add something. In another meeting on a completely different topic, we learned that the number of parents filling out the forms for free and reduced lunch is down substantially this year. Maybe you might say dramatically this year. So that the numbers on, I think your last column, ED, which is you said was free and reduced lunch, are probably suspect because they don't match and you saw the numbers were very low, which is not the case in all of our schools. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the numbers we see from that column based on knowing that so many people didn't fill those forms out.
When at one of the meetings Ann, Mark, and I had, we do meet frequently. I think it was Ann who suggested we try to, maybe Mark as well, put out paper forms at entranceways when kids are being dropped off, particularly the lower grades, to complete the low-income subsidized meal forms, so we can try to generate more interest. Right now, our average K-12 percentage of free and reduced lunch students is 23%. And those on the board, like me, who've been here for 5 years, know that's significantly lower than the 40-something% I inherited back in 2015. And I don't think it's because all of a sudden people came into money during the pandemic. So we do have to do a better job trying to get those forms completed. Monique had her hand up, so Ann, I'll get back to you after Monique.
Yeah, and I just messed up my reaction, so that hand clap shouldn't be there. I was actually
Oh
trying.
Yeah, I get you. There you go.
Sorry, yeah, nothing to clap for right now. Yeah, my question actually was about or a comment actually about the surveys you intend to do to try to elicit some information from parents who are electing to stay fully remote. And I guess I would just add I would take any data from whether it's a survey or whether there's some random person from the school kind of making calls, with a huge grain of salt, just in terms of this being fairly a sensitive area to, probe deeper into with families. So especially if this does involve issues of trust and that parents and family members may not be so willing to divulge. I think it is what it is. We're experiencing what's happening across this country in terms of the way different populations are choosing to engage right now with institutions, particularly with schools, and overwhelmingly parents of color, Black, Latinx, Asian parents, for various reasons, many of whom are concerned just for health and safety because they're being disproportionately impacted. So, we're not seeing anything, as we've talked about, that isn't happening elsewhere. And I just feel that we definitely, if you do go that route of trying to find out a little bit more about particulars, to really keep that in a perspective that it's really not going to give us necessarily the true reflection of what may be going on in parents and family members' minds, especially when it comes to issues of trust and yeah. So I'll leave it there. But I think I've expressed this many times before, and I think we, again, have to kind of accept where we are with this and do the best we can to me at this point, we have clearly an even more segregated, schooling situation going on in our school district. And it will likely be that way, I would imagine, for the remainder of the spring, right? Because if we're talking about not necessarily allowing parents and family members to opt in. So that is something we need to really think about and grapple with, how to, if it's even possible, somewhat think about the inequities that exist as a result of that and how we can somehow balance out those inequities. That's something I think we really have to seriously consider and think about.
Monique, do you recommend I not survey parents, guardians? Because it would seem invasive. Did I do that?
No, I think you can get perhaps some helpful information. I'm just saying that we have to take that with a huge grain. We can't put too much stock in that, really. That's my feeling on that. So, again, you may get some useful data, but I don't think it really will give you the full, I think, perspective on everything that's going on in family members' minds right now. So again, my concern is just that we're thinking about what the reality is. And, you may not, getting the information from parents to the extent that it is a full and accurate picture is still not going to help us with the reality that we're dealing with necessarily.
Okay. Ma'am?
On a sort of less global topic, Scott, and you may not know this off the top of your head, are we still continuing to give out lunches and breakfast to anybody in the community who wants to pick them up? As we were doing all virtual? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So those are available to, do we make breakfasts available also to our remote students? We do, Linda,
I'm sorry, what's that?
Do we make breakfast also still available to our remote students?
Yes, and we do.
So they pick up the next day's breakfast with lunch?
So free and reduced lunch is free lunch, free meals are available to all students, regardless of income level, regardless of learning environment. We do bring in all of the food from the high school cafeteria where it's being dispersed to the other schools for the kids who are coming in person. But in the afternoon hours, we have the pickup available for anyone who wants to do that. And we provide multiple meals so that we can help people out through the weekend.
That's great. Thank you. Are we still doing the Cedar Lane? Is it Cedar Lane or Cedar Ave?
No, we
okay.
we stopped. Unfortunately, there was just no interest, or I'm sure there's interest, but the people were just not coming. We advertised, we stuck it out through the last spring through June, and tried it out in September as well when we opened up the school year. But it didn't.
Are we having sort of the numbers that you would expect coming in to get lunch and breakfast?
I think
Darcy mentioned the idea of maybe trying to deliver them somehow, which I know Metuchen does with its smaller population of kids who are in economic need.
And I'm going to be reaching out to the borough volunteer group that is not as active as it was last spring, but has still reached out to me asking if they could volunteer their time to do that. We had one individual who did that last spring for a family that was homeless and living outside of town. So I know that there are people who are interested in that. It's certainly something I'm going to look into.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
And I can report back to the board on what progress, if anything, we make.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up. So Mark, wait, one other thing, Mark, before we.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, before I close that, just a quick recognition for the board of the board's work on behalf of the Census Bureau that provided us this certificate. Those of you who are not aware of the fact, we actually provided posters, space, some of our student volunteers as well to go out and encourage people to complete the census. And so we got a certificate to recognize that. So I thank the board for the support, and that'll be hanging up on a wall here in the central office. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so we are going to go through, this is a voting session. So we're going to go through the different board committee reports and recommendations. We're going to discuss those. Then we're going to take public comment, which can be, of course, on Dr. Taylor's report, on anything we're voting on, or any other topics that you'd like. And then after the public comment, we're going to vote on the action items. So let me now turn it over to Michelle to discuss the curriculum and instruction agenda items. Michelle. Unmute yourself, please.
I'll get this. I will. I promise.
You got it.
Okay, so again, I'm shutting off my video to make sure that the audio is working properly. I believe there's only 2 agenda items although my computer is giving me some problems pulling up the actual agenda. So I believe from last week, my memory serves, we only had the credit students, item number 2, and item number 1 was the curriculum.
So, Michelle, if you're having
yes.
trouble with it, the new number 2 is the approval of the field trips request. And then number
Yes,
3
thank
this
you.
week is the university graduate students.
Right. Okay. So the addition of number 2 is what I did forget. I apologize. So that is the field trip requests. They are attached to the agenda. And I won't go into the report. I think I did that last week pretty quickly because there wasn't much there. So that concludes my curriculum and instruction items.
Does any board member have any questions or comments? Okay, well, if not, then I'm gonna present the finance committee a list. So I have no committee report this week. We did not meet. Note that we are going to meet on the 15th, on March 15th, with our auditors. So there will be, and I believe also a presentation from the auditors at that time. And that's one of the reasons we have all of these new items here. So we have a couple of, we have one old bill list, and then we have a new bill list item. We have one old cafeteria bill list and one new one, but then we have months, well, and then we have treasurer's reports, months of treasurer's reports, going from item 5 to item 11. We have board secretaries reports going from item 12 through item 18. And they certify that we haven't overexpended, gone beyond budget line items and overextended in violation of the code. We have Board of Education certifications going from numbers 19 through number 25. And they're again from multiple months of the year through 2020. And again, they say that we have sufficient funds to meet our obligations for the remainder of the year. And then 26 through 32 are budget transfers. So that's when we transfer from one line to another. And again, that goes through many, many months through 2020. And those are all new. For the most part, they're new. 33 we discussed last time. 34 has 2 new items. There are 2 new consulting or contractors for professional services. And Scott, you were going to comment on these 2, since they were kind of late in the day, and we didn't have a chance to talk about them at our committee meeting 2 weeks ago.
So both were to support teachers on the day we had professional development. That was also the day of the Chinese New Year, last Friday. Mary Oates is from Conquer Math, which is the initiative that Dr. Nicosia instituted several years ago, K-8 math. The second individual is a consultant, Martin Blank. Martin did a workshop related to self-care. He did a workshop for teachers, staff, to encourage them to use certain strategies to maintain their own self-care, and then talked about how they could turnkey those self-care strategies to their students. Martin's workshop was paid for with CARES grant money. That's the federal grant that is set aside for these kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. Item 35 is new, and that's 2 students getting bedside instruction at different places. Item number 40 is a contract to put in 8 water bottle filling stations. It's hard to pronounce. At a cost of $42,000 and change, and that's also funded by Coronavirus Relief Fund grants. So we're going to be able to put these water filling stations throughout the school system. And of course, this is a nice use of the money because these are permanent stations we'll have 5 and 10 years from now. Items 41 and 42 are our audit report and our corrective action plan for the audit. The auditor will be here. They were originally scheduled to be here tonight, but couldn't be here. But Linda's going to discuss this with us.
Yes, and Mark, I actually had intended to change item number 40. I don't know why it wasn't on here. I thought I put it in. So I'd like to cancel number 40 because we are going to be purchasing the water bottle filling stations and installing them in-house.
Oh, great.
I did add a motion to the personnel section for overtime to do this, but I apparently forgot to change the motion for the installation, because the number 40 is to actually purchase and install.
Yes.
Yes. So I'd like to, okay, well, I'd like to go back and, well, just cancel this one. We'll put it on the next agenda to purchase them. We'll be purchasing 8 bottle filling stations for much less from Ferguson. Okay, so overall, it will be a much less costly installation and purchase.
Would it help you to change the agenda to name Ferguson and then say something like to a cost at a cost not to exceed?
Yes.
Pick a number?
Yes. How about with $10,000? Because I think it's 9,000 something.
Oh, it's that low compared to this.
Yes, it's significantly lower.
Well, how about just to be safe to say at a cost not to exceed $15,000?
That sounds fine.
Okay, I'll change this. So this is going to read, and I'll read it in right now. So it'll be, I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of superintendent to approve the contract with Ferguson. Is that the correct name?
Yeah, Ferguson. If you give me 1 second, I can bring it right up.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Take your time.
Just once. Okay. Go. Of Forked River, New Jersey.
Forked River, okay. Ferguson of Forked River, New Jersey. Purchase of 8 water bottle filling stations at designated locations in all schools.
Yes. A cost of $9,020.88.
$9,020.88 to be funded by Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. And is there contract still apply?
The contract is
yes. The educational service contract, co-op, plumbing, T&M contract.
Okay, the contract number is 20/21-47.
47.
Yes.
Okay, so consider that read in, please, and that's what we're going to vote on.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem at all. Trying to think on our feet.
So it'll be just the purchase of water bottle filling stations.
Yes.
To be installed by in-house staff. Okay.
Yeah, and this didn't even say about installation, so I'm going to leave the way I read it. So now the audit report.
Yes, the audit report.
Presentation, please.
Yes, so as Mr. Krieger mentioned, the auditors will be here on March 15th to give their report in detail. Each year, the auditors do obviously a very thorough audit, and they will often have suggestions and recommendations for ways to improve the operations of the district. And in this particular year, there were 6 recommendations, and the recommendations have been provided to the board, mostly regarding staffing, collection of funds, reconciliations, outstanding items, so, operational items. So the corrective action plan has been provided to the board with the steps that are going to be taken to improve that in, the recommendations.
And I just want to say that for the last several years, when the auditors have come, part of the recommendation is to get more staff, that we're chronically understaffed in the business office. And I think this is what they're saying again, that we really need to get help. And for the board's purposes, we're trying to work on it. And hopefully we'll see some positive changes.
Right.
And with that, and hold your questions, with that, there's only one other item. And this is the approval of the non-public school technology purchase. It's actually not technology, sorry, it's security, isn't it? Security purchase for Rinas Beis Yaakov Yeshiva. And this is the discussion we had a month ago about the, and then talked about 2 weeks ago for the security aid, which is a complete pass-through. We're not paying for it, but we have to review it and approve it. Inadvertently, and I'm going to say this is because of understaffing, we all thought we had a contract with the Educational Services Commission to do this for us, to do the checking and the vetting of this non-public school security aid. But in fact, we didn't have a contract. We're not continuing with a contract we used to have in years past, and we didn't continue. And so we are doing this ourselves. And it's not that it's a huge amount of work, but it has to get done. In fact, it's a small amount of work, but it has to get done correctly. And Scott met with the, and this was in the board folder, Scott met with the executive director of this school, discussed their meetings with the police to review their security aid, what they were doing, using it for, why they felt they needed an armed security guard, which had to do with attacks on Jewish schools around New Jersey and around the country. And they're meeting with our local police force, which approved what they were doing and how they were doing it, knows that there is a guard there. And Scott not only vetted it, but after talking to the executive director, independently of this aid, they've made plans to use each other's schools as evacuation, sorry, I couldn't get the word out, as evacuation sites in case either school had to be evacuated for some reason. So it's a very good thing for us to do it ourselves because we're building a relationship with the school. And again, we've gone through the steps we're supposed to do in vetting this aid, and the written document is in the board folder, which Scott put together after his meetings with the executive director there. So I urge the board to pass this. We've done the steps we're supposed to do to get the money passed to the school. So that's my report, and I'll open it for questions, please.
Gosh, sorry, I meant to raise my hand and again, click the wrong reaction button.
Go ahead,
Monique. Yeah, can you, the last point you made about our schools serving as, if I heard this correctly, evacuation locations, did I hear that correctly, or?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all right. So this is a mutual.
Yeah, Scott worked this out with this gentleman, and it's a mutual deal.
Yeah, the Irving students were previously scheduled to be evacuated to the first aid squad station across the street, which could barely fit them all in one space. So we're fortunate now to have a larger space.
And what are the specific circumstances around? We're talking about like major event type evacuations?
Correct.
Clearly.
Correct.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily impact the entire town.
Chris.
Yeah, so I just, why is the expense for the professional development appearing after it happened? Don't we usually put things before?
We try. Sometimes we scramble. We've come into new names. Martin is somebody who was in my social emotional learning network, and Jen Knapp, in that case, was looking for somebody to fill a void spot we needed and filled. And I said, oh, try Martin. He's great. And so that'll happen from time to time.
Are there other things? I mean, the CARES money is quite flexible, right? I mean, I guess I'm not really convinced that that this changes my attitude about this kind of expense because it's funded out of the CARES grant. I'd just like to maybe express that I understand this was maybe an emergency situation where you had an opening, but I certainly hope that we generally get these kind of expenses on the agenda before they happen.
Understood and respected.
And Chris, it's relatively rare. I mean, it's perhaps a few times a year that this happens. And we're on the lookout for it, but there's some situations where we're really stuck. So I understand. Anne, did you have a question? Someone had a question. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, if that's it, Anne, I'll turn it over to you for personnel and communication.
All right, thank you so much. Personnel, I'll just go over the new items. We have a new maternity leave of absence, number 3. We have a new resignation of Ms. Stahl from Bartle. We're so sorry to see her go. I believe as a practical matter, she was already at this point living elsewhere. She was not employed at the district this year. I'm sorry, she was not physically present in the district this year. But still, we're sorry to see that she won't be coming back. Number 6, we have a resignation of Maria Lamatina. Sorry about that. An additional instructional assignment is number 8 for Mr. Bolivar, because he will be covering orchestra. Oh, sorry, this is music theory. He'll be covering music theory during the period before our new teacher gets here. Same number 9, he'll be covering orchestra during that period. Sam Perez, new orchestra teacher, will be starting on March 26th. Number 11, we have a few additions to the virtual after-school Title I enrichment program list of personnel. Anything else that is new? Number 16, Ms. Palas will be supervising an independent study program for one student, or for a known number of students, at a very low rate of $100 per student. We have some new translators, number 7, or a new item concerning translators, number 17, excuse me. Number 18, this is the bottle filling station installation that Linda was referring to earlier. We did not have a personnel meeting. We met on February 1st, and we talked about it a little bit at our last meeting. Questions, anybody, comments?
Linda does have one item.
I don't see it on the agenda. Were we reading this in, Dr. Taylor?
We don't, the item you're going to write in was originally deleted.
Oh boy. I thought it was on here and we were just changing the dollar amount.
Would you like me to explain the resolution?
Yes, but I don't know what kind of wording we want to put on it. That's the thing. I wasn't thinking about the wording of it. I was just thinking about the dollar amount.
Okay, so we have a need to compensate one of our basketball coaches, Chris Brzezowski, to cover some of the work that the current head coach cannot do because the current head coach has a reasonable accommodation to work from home. So Mr. Brzezowski, Coach Brzezowski, is going to take over. I negotiated with HPEA to come up with what we thought was a fair rate. And then I did consult Mark and Ann, and it appears that it would be acceptable to the full board. The rate would be $2,900, not $2,500, Linda. That's 40% of the season that Mr. Brzezowski will now be serving as head coach. Since Mr. Little, Coach Little, was able to coach the first part of the season when our high school was not in person. So, Ms. Hofala, did you come up with some proposed language?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Does that
I thought we had dates and everything in here, but maybe not. Okay, so the title I put was approval of additional Schedule B compensation. Dr. Taylor, please correct me if you would like me to have something else. I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve additional compensation of $2,900 to Chris Brzezowski, an additional Schedule B compensation. to perform as head basketball coach for the term
40%.
for 40% of the season.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
good.
And I do apologize to the board for coming late with this. It was an item that took me several days to work through. Back and forth negotiations and whatnot.
Darcy?
Is there a comparable deduction elsewhere?
No, we can't. I can't reduce somebody else's salary once that person has been assigned to a contract to perform those duties.
So we're double paying essentially to have a head coach for the basketball team.
I'm not sure if it's double, but we are paying additional money because we can't have the initial coach in person.
Gotcha. Okay.
Can that person be assigned to do some other duty
Yeah.
at some future time?
Well, no, the other person is. I'm sorry, Rob. Yeah, the other person is coaching virtually. He's going to be working with Mr. Brzezowski to continue interacting with the kids before practice, after practice, before game, after game. So he'll still be involved in the team's operation, just not the on the court actual plays.
Was that your question? I thought there was a slightly
Well,
different question.
the explanation answers it answers the question, I guess. It's obvious, clearly not ideal. It's not ideal in any way.
It's not a good situation, but we could not let someone be in the building for one thing, but who can't be in the building for another thing, being teaching. So that just doesn't work. I mean, it would be hypocrisy, and it just doesn't work. So this is the only accommodation we could do.
Without sacrificing the season or the rest of the games.
Right, without sacrificing the rest of the games.
So, Linda, do you want to read the resolution aloud again?
Yeah, I just added one little phrase. The motion is entitled Approval of Additional Schedule B Compensation. The motion reads, I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve additional Schedule B compensation of $2,900 to Chris Brzezowski to perform as in-person head basketball coach for 40% of the season.
That's good.
Great, I love it.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
And as difficult as this is, we don't have many options. It didn't have many options. Any other personnel questions? Okay, let's go on to policy and regulations. That's Darcy.
Hi, everybody. So policy did meet since the last, since our workshop meeting. We met on February 9th, and you'll see that we've added a number of policies to first reading. And Marilyn did point out that it is a lot to read in one go. So, you know, this is one of the reasons why we have a first reading and a second reading. If you don't get to all of them for first reading, that's not a problem. You can always come back between this meeting and then our next voting meeting with any questions or comments or concerns you have about any of those. So this is kind of like this should be the last gasp of all of the policies that we've been trying to get through for quite some time. And lo and behold, just as I was thinking we were done with that and we could move on to the policies that we need to look at on a yearly basis, Drowse Esme came out with another policy update. So there is a list of, I think Scott highlighted 13 that we'll need to get to. I have not had a chance to take a look at that yet, but I will take a look at that before our next meeting, which was scheduled for March 9th, but I let Scott know that that's a date that's not going to work for me, unfortunately. So we're trying to move that to March 11th. So yeah, so that's all I have for now. The rest of the policies for second reading are policies that we have looked at. This is our fourth go round, so those should be pretty good to go. And if anybody has any questions or comments about any of the new ones for first reading, I'm all ears.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I mean, so the good thing about the way we're doing this now of putting stuff through the committees is that, you know, if you haven't looked at one because it was part of your committee and you don't get a chance to look at it before the meeting, those policies have already gone through two committees. They've gone through the committee that looked at them, well, except I guess ones that are for the policy committee, those have just gone through policy. But the vast majority of the policies have gone through two different committees before they make it onto an agenda, and reviewed by Dr. Taylor. So, and sent to any, you know, any administrator that's impacted by those policies. So we're really trying to do a thorough job on these.
Okay, well, thank you, Darcy. Monique, do you have a equity and excellence report?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to now go back to item 10, which is public comment.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Mark, could I pipe up belatedly?
Sure.
About policy? You know what? I will send this separately to Scott and you and Susan and Darcy, but I think policy 1B 3160, physical examination. I think we're going to take out the part about the rapid COVID test. Am I right about that? I think it got left in there. Again, I'll email you guys.
Okay, thank you.
And that's just that.
Okay, thank you, Ann. So on to public comment. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. So please raise your hand and give your name and your address, and then I'll call on you. And I see Buffy, you have your hand up. So if you'd take the mic, please, and speak to us.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I am a obviously public school parent. I have a second grader who's at Bartle. We've been all remote since last year. He's also at very high risk for complications if he contracted coronavirus, and I'm a single parent. And I'm speaking,
I need your address.
Oh, 60 North 7th Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And I'm speaking tonight just to kind of reiterate my ongoing concerns with remote learning. I can only speak to my experience of a parent of a young child, that I think it's quite damaging. I was just looking at a study of remote learning from 2015 conducted by Stanford University, which talked about the incredible academic deficits, and that it was just very harmful to children. So that being said, obviously there's a hybrid option at Bartle. My family has not chosen to take that hybrid option. And I have explained this before, but I think it's important to explain again because my experience is one that is not represented on the Board of Education. The hybrid option is, to me, the least safe option because you have a situation where you only can send your child somewhere for instruction 2 days a week, and the other 3 days you're kind of left on your own. That presents two problems for parents like me of a high-risk child. One, you have parents who are finding alternative childcare arrangements for those other 3 days. So you have parents who are using daycares, grandparents, family friends, babysitters, whatever it might be, they're cobbling something together. So you have even more exposure because you're hybrid. And the second issue with it is that there's just little to no instruction 3 days a week. So I've written this to the board, but I would also just like to reiterate that it is my hope that Bartle can move quickly to 4 or 5 day instruction. I know for my family, that would be a really big change, and that would allow us to actually, have my child in person, which is ultimately what I want. And I have three quick comments. My second is that it's after 9 o'clock, and I've been texting with other parents of young kids, all saying we need to get our kids to bed, but we really want to speak tonight. So I would ask that you please have a public comment that is earlier and later, because to really encourage community participation, you have to enable us to be able to participate. And the last thing is just if there's what the fall plans are and when parents will be informed of them, because I think many of us are thinking that if we don't have an assurance that the school is going to open 5 days a week full time in the fall, that we're going to have to look elsewhere, whether that's moving out of town or, withdrawing our kids from the school. Like, we really have to be able to make plans so our kids can be in school full time in the fall. Thank you.
Buffy, thank you. And I would simply say that it's our hope to get the kids back 4 or 5 days a week, as much as anyone's. It's difficult, but I think with the numbers we're starting to see and the numbers coming down, it's really our fervent hope that we can move quickly on this. We will see, but we do want to move and do this. Dan Mladnick, I saw your hand up next.
Hi, thank you. I'm Dan Mladnick. I live at 216 Graham Street in Highland Park. And and I have kids at Bartle and in the middle school, and I'm a teacher in the high school. And I want to say that I'm actually saddened by the division that's been created in our community over this issue. Like, it's a huge issue, obviously, and everybody has real struggles in some way. And it's just saddening to see issues like this divide people. In a time like this, I think it's so important for us to find common ground. And, I see two clear issues of common ground, at least from my perspective. I was speaking with a good friend this weekend, and we were talking about mental health struggles that people have had, that children have had during this time. And I think those are very real. And I think we need to do more to address them. And I think that's something everybody can get behind. And, I'm just kind of coming up with some ideas, but I think that it would be wonderful if we could have a lot of support groups, like many support groups, where you've got a designated group of students, maybe 6 to 8 students, using the restorative practices model, really developing community within that group while strengthening resilience skills and mental health. And I'm envisioning that sort of thing as being something that could be done in person, spaced, definitely 6 feet, masks, good ventilation. Maybe we need to get more interns, I don't know, but I'm just thinking even once a week, if kids could be going in and connecting, and maybe if they were to be able to, have at least one friend in their designated group, I think it would make a big difference. And I just know that anytime I've been in groups like that, it's been really powerful, and I've looked forward to connecting with that group. I've looked forward to sharing. And I just think that a lot of our kids right now need to really develop resilience skills and strengthen their, in a more proactive way, their mental health. And I think that this sort of thing could take off if it were in person, and it were done really, really safely. We are not choosing to send our kids in person right now, but if that sort of thing were done safely, it's something that I would consider, if it were a really small setting. So that's the first thing that I think that we could get behind. The second area that I see as an area of common ground is, I think that we all want our schools to reopen. We just disagree about how quickly, and we disagree about some of the data, and how scary some of the reports are that we're getting. So I think for me, this whole time I've been saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not an epidemiologist. And so I've been saying, please, somebody who knows what they're doing. I'm like, Dr. Fauci, tell me what to do. And I want to reopen safely. That's what I want. And I want, as a teacher who's in person right now, and it is a struggle for me and for my family. It's something that I just want to feel really safe and that when I'm there, and I want to feel like my family's safe when I come home. And, we finally have some clear guidance from the CDC. And I know that not everybody loves everything that's in that. I don't love the fact that it says that teachers don't need to be vaccinated, but if that's what it says, okay. But there were a few things that really stood out for me. One, that we are in this red zone, right? And okay, but it doesn't say we must be closed. Okay. But it does say, and I watched Dr. Greta Massetti. I watched her presentation to the NEA. I listened to it carefully. And, she said that if you are in the red zone, you have to be extra careful that, you are strictly implementing these mitigation measures. And this is, a top scientist related to, who studies these things, who's telling us what to do. And so the following things, I think we have a collective responsibility to implement with fidelity. Masks, masking properly and with good masks, and teaching the kids how to do that properly. And that's something that I know we're going to be working on, but I'm seeing like single layer masks that with gaps and stuff. I'm telling kids, so that sort of thing, like I think we need to really be on that. I think that 6 feet, she says if you're in the red zone, it should be required that there's 6 feet distance. I'm concerned when I hear everybody say, not everybody, but when I understand the struggles. I can't imagine right now having a kid in Irving. Like, it's got to be so difficult. But I feel for those Irving teachers, and I want to know, and I'm not saying that this isn't the case, but I want to know that they've got 6 feet of distance between those kids, because if they don't, I'm worried for them. And, so I think that's really important. So, when I hear about adding class sizes there, I get very concerned we have a lot of teachers that are putting themselves on the front lines there, and I get worried. And, I think another important thing is incentivizing testing for both our students and for our staff. I think that, I know that we've talked about some creative ways to do that. I know that some universities have done things like, they've actually used cash. I think that, those of us in-person staff members, we could be incentivized too, because adult to adult transmission, from what I've read, is more risky than student to adult even. So those are just a few thoughts. And I just would like to see us all come together and, see if we can agree on these two things. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much for your thoughtful comments. I'd like to make a couple of comments. The first is the board couldn't agree more about the mitigation being done and what we've tried as much as we could to put in place, including getting a testing organization in. We had so many meetings about that, and finally, got someone in. And we have discussed incentives, but it seems it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and of course we can't force people to take tests. So we do agree about the mitigation, and while the CDC guidance is clear in some ways, it's not 100% clear in other ways. So it in some ways made it more difficult, but I think we see a path. We see a path to moving forward and keeping people safe, which has been at the top, near the top of our priorities. Your first comment, though, about groups of students getting together, that seems to me to perhaps be an extension of the persistence pod that Dr. Taylor put together, where we got students in who didn't have proper accommodations at home, didn't have good internet access, didn't want to be at home because of mental health issues, wanted to be in the school. That's not so much small groups, that's a larger groups. But Scott, maybe this is something you could think about and brainstorm with your principals and your team, getting smaller groups of students together. I like the idea, and I think we could perhaps follow that, and it could help us get open in a safe way. So again, thank you for your.
I concur that what Dan suggested is a great idea, and he knows the teen center as well as I do. I'm sure they're thinking these things as well. So, but I will call Elizabeth Asamoah, the director of the teen center, who will serve as the point on this initiative, and see where she stands right now in the plans.
Scott, am I correct that we do have a number of groups running right now? By the teen center?
Virtual.
Virtual. I see what you mean.
Yeah,
sorry. Yep,
yeah. I think what I took Dan's. I listened
Yes.
carefully what Dan said, and I took away from you the idea that we actually bring kids in person together in small groups.
It's a good idea, really good idea. Seth, you're next, and then Leora, and then Jennifer Altman, in that order. So Seth, the mic is yours.
Thanks, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank.
Wait, name and address, please.
Copperdale, 23 South 2nd Avenue.
Thank you.
2 kids in high school and 1 in middle school. And they are hoping to all go back in person. They're in the pod 2, which didn't get to go last week because of the snow and all that. So that was a bit of a letdown, but we're very thankful for the efforts being made to get kids back in safely. I just wanted to make a couple of comments around the equity questions. One is just in response to the layout of who's coming back right now with the 2-day-a-week option. And a little bit, Dr. Taylor, around your response that if people haven't signed up, they wouldn't be able to get in, except if they've indicated and they got on the list early on. Those are equity questions I want to be really careful about, because a lot of folks who would have made the choice to just be virtual made that choice because they need consistency 5 days a week. And the thought of back and forth. And I'm not talking about babysitters. I'm not talking about people who can pay for help. I'm talking about siblings watching other siblings. And the breaking up of 2 days on, 2 days off is a big issue with the families that I work with in this town. The number of times that our kids tell us that, one of their friends had to step out of class because the 3-year-old was screaming. There's a lot of kids watching kids while they're supposed to be going to school. We're going to see equity issues around class in this town in terms of education lost this year, because kids who are supposed to be focusing on studying are focusing on childcare. And I think that the 2-day on, 2-day off thing is not ultimately, a good thing. That being said, please don't go back. Keep it right where it is and only move forward. I'm definitely not somebody who's saying, let's not take baby steps back into the building, because I do think that there's value in the momentum of heading back in, and we'll let it be what it is. So I do just want to echo what Dan shared about a desire to see this town be a place of sort of graciousness with each other, even as we all have deep held feelings about this and see it from a lot of angles, a lot of justice angles on all sides, I would say. So it's probably best all just get in the habit of taking a breath before, taking a breath before we respond too quickly. So thank you.
Seth, thanks so much. Leora, could you again give your name and address and
Yep.
take over?
My name is Leora Petter-Lipstein. I'm a high school student. I'm a senior, actually. 340 Mansfield Street, right by Bartle. I want to second the point made about having different public comment times, because I know that I've had like issues that I wanted to bring up, but having to sit through at this point 2 hours of a board meeting is harder, especially when you're an underclassman and homework is, there's more homework and is also more important. I'm a second semester senior, you know, I can kind of do whatever, but having different like specific, hey, this meeting is a public comment meeting, would be really helpful, because it's just easier to make that fit into a schedule rather than having to attend most of a meeting. Yeah, and also groups, the groups that Mr. Mladig mentioned, I think those are also a really good idea, if just to get people to leave the house, because I know that's something I've struggled with, where I'll notice myself getting crankier if I stay in the house for a while. So pushing students to get out of the house is a good idea. And then unrelated, but I also wanted to mention, I'm not sure which like level this would be on, but especially in like 10th, 11th, 12th grade, the books we read in English class tend to cover heavier and more mature topics, which isn't bad in itself. They're good books. I enjoy reading those books, but I think it would be good to have a district policy for the teacher to include trigger warnings when mentioning, like introducing the books, because it can be really mentally harmful to all of a sudden read about these really mature topics and have no warning at all. So just to get a heads up that, hey, be forewarned, this book does have a murder scene in it, or whatever that is, would just be helpful for students to like mentally prepare for that. Because I enjoyed reading, specifically the book I'm thinking about is The Women of Brewster Place, sorry. Towards the end, there's some pretty graphic scenes in there, and it would have been good to be prepared, to be like, hey, okay, steel yourself for this, take a deep breath, and be aware of what you're walking into. I think that's just a good thing to have from a student perspective.
Okay, thank you. I did take note when Buffy made the suggestion again to have a earlier public comment period. And we have done that for about half our meetings recently, perhaps trying to understand when there's a topic where we're going to get a lot of people coming and wanting to discuss things. I think perhaps in this time where there are so many difficult decisions to be made, it may pay for us. It may pay for us to move one public comment period up much earlier, perhaps after the superintendent's report. This comes from a board member who's been on school boards for 12 or 13 years over many year period, and mostly never had anyone attend our meetings in the public. So it gets a little getting used to. But I think it's a reasonable thing to consider, and we'll discuss it before the March meetings. So thank you. And Buffy, you as well, thank you.
I just want to say, even having it as a specific time, because as it is currently, it's kind of roughly towards the end, but having this time specifically is when we have it, so people can show up and say, okay, well, I'll do this and that around that time.
Well, if the meetings start at 7:30, which they do, we, generally do. The advertised meetings, not special meetings, which we have rarely, like last week. If we have the meeting starting at 7:30, it's pretty likely that before 8 o'clock, we are done with the superintendent's report. Around 8 o'clock, we're done with superintendent's report, and we go on to the board business. A lot of this discussion is not about board business. In fact, none of it virtually is about the board business we did tonight. So I could see moving it up so people could have a pretty good idea that around 8 o'clock, there's going to be the first public comment period. I'm going to discuss with other board members, with Dr. Taylor, and get a feel for it, and maybe we'll move this up to starting in March for everyone. So thank you again. Jennifer Altman, please, and then Michelle, I'll call on you next.
Hi, everybody. Jennifer Altman. I'm at 31 Walter Avenue. And I know you guys see me comment a lot, and I really want you to know I look forward to the day that I don't need to comment anymore. So I'm not trying to overload you with comments. I know it's protocol to generally, I had wanted to make a statement about the middle school. And I know it's protocol to write school leadership and, CC Dr. Taylor. And I normally do that. I'm only speaking tonight on this because I noticed the board wasn't meeting for another like 3 weeks, and I will still do that letter for school leadership. So, and I also know that the third quarter just started this month, beginning of this month. So we really do have like almost a half an academic year left. So there's still a lot of time in this year to reach our academic goals, right? And so forth. And I'm thrilled that we're moving. There's talk of a 4 to 5 day week, even at the middle school, if the numbers are low enough in terms of coming in. I think that's crucial. And I really, really want to push the board to think about that. And I know that, like, I saw the data, only about two-thirds of the middle school teachers are remote. So I'm hoping that as they get vaccinated, they come in. So anyway, the reason I bring this up, I've sort of mentioned on this before, but I think it's really important to say is that I really applaud the board for, and Dr. Taylor and the leadership team for looking at how many kids were failing and saying, we're not gonna put those on their transcripts. I think it's also great in terms of taking away the shame and depression around failing. But I really, there's still half a year left. And the kids that are failing are not learning. And I don't want to speak for all. I think, there's a reason they're failing. And I just want us to remember what our purpose is as a district. Our purpose as a district is to educate the children in our town. So, and keep them safe and do all those other things. But I'm really concerned about those folks that are failing, and that they still can get an education for the rest of this year. So how do we address those kids that are failing? One of the reasons they may be failing is because they cannot learn on a Chromebook. They can't learn through a Chromebook. They just can't. I'm not saying that's half. I don't know if it's quarter. I don't know if it's 5%, but I'm telling you that there's half a school year left. They've lost 3/4 of a year, right? They lost last spring, last quarter. And I'm really scared of 2 more semesters going by for kids that cannot learn from a Chromebook. So I wanted to say that that I wanted to see if the middle school could seriously consider, because I consider the middle school in that K-8 group. I don't consider them like the high school students. That might be biased because I don't have a high school struggling, and I know there's high school kids struggling. But in terms of what the K-8, in terms of the CDC is saying, and what our our federal administration is saying, the K-8 kids are struggling with remote learning. And so what I'm asking the board and the leadership to do, but the board to maybe support or look into or encourage, is that certain sections, if possible, be taught all person only and remote only. Now, let me talk. I know that's logistically challenging. I don't think it's impossible, though, at most of middle school classes. For those of you, I know I think the whole board doesn't have anyone in the middle school. I think Ms. Gowan has an 8th grader, but the rest of you have kids that have graduated or in high school. So if you can remember your child back in middle school, they're young. They're still really young, and they've lost 1.25 years, I'm sorry, 3/4 of a year. So what I'm asking is, if you remember in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in our district, many of the classes, a teacher teaches the entire grade, right? We have one science teacher for the whole grade. We have one history teacher for the whole grade. It's not always the same with language and math and some specials. So I think with a little finagling, we could have teachers teaching only in-person classes and only remote. Why do I ask that? For everyone. I've talked to many parents who are keeping their kids remote and kids that are sending them in. All parents want this. It's all I don't know for teachers, but I can imagine that teachers would want this too. I can't even imagine the teachers that are trying to teach to two populations at once. So I also think it's probably safer, right? If a teacher's in person and then they are teaching some sections in person and then some remote only, for those remote onlys, they can take their mask off. Even teachers that are remote, right? 2/3 of the teachers are remote still at the middle school. So my child's going to go in. Oh, I'm wrong. Okay, good. That's great.
No, six, I'm sorry, I had to step in because it's the second time you missed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, please. I hope I'm wrong.
13 out of 20 teachers are teaching in person. So that's 65% of our.
Oh, okay, great. So, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that they have to stay remote for medical reasons. And I hope, you know, that they will slowly come in for vaccination. And it's just bad luck, right? For kids that are coming in and bad luck, whatever it is. But I do think even for the teachers that are remote, they could be teaching the in-person only sections and the remote only sections. That's where you put a teacher up on the screen in the front of the class. Again, kids off a Chromebook if they can't learn from a Chromebook. You know, if you have a section only that's no Chromebook. I know I'm speaking long, so let me just say if there's any other thing I want to say. I am willing. I know some, you know, Jen Vorey, she told me I could say this. Her kids are staying totally remote. My kids, well, I have, you know, I have a middle schooler that's going in, that's struggling. We are willing to work with the district. We will do it for free on a day and get our Excel sheets out and see if this is possible. I know it's a scheduling finagling, but remember what our goal is. Our goal is to educate the children in this town. I think it's worth a day of playing around with the scheduling to see if it's possible. It'll help teachers, it'll help students. And it's really, I just can't imagine kids. I know I have a kid that cannot do school on a Chromebook. Cannot. We're going on 11 months now. And I can't wait another 6 months for education. And I do think we're a small enough district to be creative to get a section or two where there's actual teaching off a Chromebook at this K through 8th grade level. And I just wanted the board to, you know, if you guys could respond. And I know it's a task, it's a logistical task, but I'm willing to give my help to see if it's possible.
Well, it's definitely a scheduling problem. And when we first started talking about this, with my formidable skills in data analysis, I looked at it and I came up with very poor solutions. And that's kind of independently of our administrators who do it for a living. I mean, I'm not paid to do it, but I looked. It's very difficult. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but or is impossible, but it might pay to have a look now. But I can't promise that we can do something with it. I think when I looked at it, it looked like we needed to hire a lot of new teachers, you know, a lot of extra teachers to be able to cover all the classes. Maybe I'll have a discussion with Ann and Scott about some of the issues involved. We meet every week, multiple times. We could get started and talk about this as an issue that because it's an issue we're going to have to face. Oops, you moved, so I'm getting my head straight.
Yeah, you moved for me too. Yeah,
it's an issue we're going to have to face in some ways as we move forward. You know, as the numbers come down, which they are, there's articles every day that we're getting close to herd immunity. I don't think we are, but it's going to happen. And we're going to have to face it. So it's probably a good time to start thinking about it. So I'm willing to put some legwork into it now. I'm willing to meet with Dr. Taylor and other board members and administrators who are willing to talk about it. But I think it's very difficult. I'll be honest. I think it's very, very, very difficult. I have 2 middle school grandchildren, and I know how difficult it is. It's one of them loves being on the Chromebook, and the other one hates it and can't do it on there. So I know what you're dealing with. And I'm not there every day, but I was there enough in the spring and summer to see it. So it's a problem we should try to solve. But it is like getting the students in a better situation at Irving and Bartle, meaning more days of the week. It's the same kind of thing. We have to go there, but we can't do it immediately. It's not like it takes time. And it has the same physical issues with the mitigation. So again, I'm willing to talk about it and start looking at it, but I don't know how quickly we can have a solution for you and for others.
Can I just say about the persistence pod, or
Yes.
I just to reiterate, say something about that. It's very commendable that the middle school, Dr. Taylor and Ms. Brady set that up, and that I just want to say, for a kid that the issue is they can't be taught off a Chromebook, there's zero help. We tried it for a half a day. I'm just telling you that there's a population of kids that cannot be taught by a Chromebook, and we're going on 11 months now, and we need to find a solution for those kids. Even if it's a small group, even if we need to find, I just feel like I'm willing, I appreciate you willing to look at it for one section or something like that.
Anne, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, Jen, that would be amazing. I want to echo everything Mark said. We really did. We talked about how can we try to divide the high school and middle school up, like with Bartle and Irving, because that would be ideal. I'm still committed to working on it, to the extent we can. And maybe we can get one section of one class without having to hire too many extra teachers. And I think it is an important thing for us to think about for equity reasons as well. I mean, we saw that most of our Black and other minority students, our Latino students, are choosing in the middle school and high school to stay home. And the split screen thing for teachers makes their experience worse, because it is so difficult for a teacher to pay attention to both sides. So if we could have one or two all virtual sections and all in-person sections, I mean, that would be so perfect for both sides, for both groups of people. I do feel bad, I'm a big one to push schools to open, but I do feel like we impose a bit on the students who are staying home, because now they're not getting that focused virtual instruction anymore, right? And that's a lot of our students who are traditionally underserved. So, I mean, I think it's a wonderful idea. I have no idea if we can do it, but very supportive. And that sounds terrible. It just, the Excel thing it's almost impossible, but.
Maybe just start with the middle school, because high school I think is more complicated with all the electives.
We'll take a look at both.
Yeah.
And see what's possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Babies in the
Thank
middle
you.
school.
Michelle, you wanted to speak, and then Sarah, as soon as Michelle's done.
Yeah, I shut off my video again just to make sure the audio is okay. I just wanted to remind everyone who is having trouble speaking in public due to scheduling issues and time. I just want to remind everyone that our email is always open. There's no reason that, I hope there's no reason to think that you can't communicate with the board and with Dr. Taylor just because you can't, get to public comment. Go ahead and write us novels, email us with anything that you are concerned with. I don't want to ever give the impression that we're not listening just because we are doing other things during our board meetings. These are things that are required by law to be done in public. So I don't think that there's anything that we can do about that, but you can email us at midnight. And we do read them and we do take them very seriously. So I just want to invite people to remember that and to not stress too much, Don't stress too much that you can't make it to public comment. It's okay.
Don't email them at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because some of us do actually go to sleep. Sarah, you're up. Thank you, Michelle. Sarah, you have the floor. Name and address, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah Heimowitz from 216 Graham Street. And I just want to say, I have two kids, one in Bartle, one in the middle school. They're both remote for now, but I want them back in school, and they want to be back in school when it's safe. And my husband is a teacher in the high school. And I want him to be safe. I want everyone else to be safe. And clearly there's an issue of trust in, in the safety of returning to school. And one thing that strikes me as very odd and inconsistent with our desire to reopen the schools and get everyone back is having indoor sports where kids are playing sports without masks, because that's clearly contradictory to the CDC guidance that we now have and that we should follow to the best of our ability to ensure that the schools are as safe as possible. So I'm wondering why we've chosen to do that, because if we are concerned about people's trust in the school and the numbers that we saw at the beginning of Dr. Taylor's presentation, that's like an obvious reason why someone would be concerned about the safety of returning to schools. If we have a policy where kids are playing indoors without masks against other schools up close and breathing heavily and then going to class. For me, that doesn't make sense. So I'm wondering why we're choosing to do that.
Especially considering the new mutations of the virus.
Well, it is, I would only say that it's another example of contradictory guidance from different government groups. So the New Jersey was given guidance that it was okay to do it, and 90 some odd % of the school districts in the state are doing it. The basketball season is over next week, I believe. And after basketball, we have the track, which is outdoors only. So that's not going to be indoors. And the next decision that the administration has to make will be what to do with wrestling. But the rumors that I'm hearing are that nobody wants to do wrestling indoors because that's somewhat more dangerous, or much more dangerous potentially. Plus the CDC came out with their set of guidelines after New Jersey did and after we and many other districts started the indoor basketball. So it's very complicated. The 9 of us who are sitting here aren't paid to do this. This is volunteer work. I don't think anybody would have volunteered if we knew. I mean, I've been on boards before, as you've heard, you probably know. I've been on a lot of different school, Highland Park boards of education. I didn't bargain for this. None of us bargained for this. It's very difficult. And so that was a decision the administration made. I think board members had different opinions on it, but that decision is over. I mean, virtually over, and we're moving on. And moving on to the track is going to be all out of doors. And at least that's what we're told. And then wrestling, I think we're going to make decisions, or we're not, but the administration is going to make decisions. And we are now back in school. It's not perfect. You've heard all the different, Sarah, the different opinions on how we do this and how difficult it is. But we're moving forward, and we're going to get the schools back. We're going to get them open. We're going to get the kids back. And I'm pretty confident with what I know and what I read that by September, by the summer, we're going to have herd immunity and we're going to be able to go back. But who knows? I mean, there could be another variant no one knows about. And so I think someone said, well, what confidence do you have we're going to come back in September? Well, the path we're on is a very good path to September, except who knows if there's some variant that the vaccine doesn't protect against. What do you do then? So it's a very difficult problem. This is a terrible, difficult problem. So that's all I can say. So thank you, though. And it's something I hate to use this pun, it's something we wrestled with. You're the question you asked. We spent days and days discussing it, and had to do on the one hand with the safety and the other hand with the mental health of the students. So it's a very difficult problem. So Dan, you had your hand up, but I want to see if there's anyone else in the public who wants to speak. And if you do, please raise your hand now, because if I call Dan for a second go round, I will end the public comment.
Mark, I just want to say one thing quickly and
Please.
echo what you said, or piggyback rather on what you said. I need to remind the community that the decisions to do things like bring in sports, open up, they are made by me in consultation with other people. So when Mark suggests that the board and I wrestled with this, I have to be frank and tell you that I was the one who was pushing harder than some other people maybe to do sports, knowing that there would be some concerns from members of the community. But I have a reason, I have a series of reasons, and I'd be glad to talk about them one-on-one with people who are concerned about that, about my decision to go with sports.
Rob Scott's hand is up, Dan's hand is up. Those are the last two speakers. So Rob, you have the floor, and then Dan, and again, name and address, please.
Sure, I'm Rob Scott at 25 South 2nd Avenue in Highland Park. And I wasn't going to comment, but I just wanted to say, if what I'm hearing is that indoor wrestling is not going to happen, I just have to say, given that choice is concordant with the CDC guidelines, that would be the kind of thing that would help with trust in the community that y'all are actually listening to what the CDC is saying, to what epidemiologists are saying. And the other thing that I just wanted to comment, I'm of course incredibly hopeful about September. I'm bullish about the summer when the weather will be good, but I think we need to be just really realistic, and I don't think it's an issue of maybe there's going to be a variant that's going to pop up. We already have the Bristol variant from the UK that is more transmissible, at least 30% more transmissible, which means that's what's led to Dr. Fauci's wear 2 masks or a K95 advice, which I hope we can do in our schools. And we also have the variant in South Africa that appears to be resistant to the AstraZeneca vaccine. And we have the Manaus variable from a variant from Brazil, which also appears to be resistant. So it's not a matter of if such a variant will be out there. They're out there, and it's a bit of a race between getting people vaccinated. And I think we need to be prepared. That is pretty unlikely that we're going to be at magical herd immunity in September. And we need to be prepared for what we do in our schools in September if we find ourselves in the CDC red zone. Because if in September we're in the CDC red zone, the only reason that's going to be true is because we're contending with a vaccine-resistant variant, which is a possibility. So we need to be ready for that possibility. And I mean, what we've heard from everyone here, from Jen Altman, from Seth Copperdale, who we kind of disagree on some of this stuff, is that we want to be back in September, right? We want to be in person, and the thing that we've got now, this 2-day-a-week thing, it's not great, right? The data that Dr. Taylor presented was like, my jaw was on the floor. Wow, that's a segregated system of instruction. That's not good. We don't want that. We want to do better than that. So I think we really need to be prepared to do something better in September if we have to, if the circumstances dictate that. So what Jen Altman said about, like, you know, doing the homework about alternative kinds of scheduling, I mean, that I think seems particularly relevant for September.
Thank you. Dan, you're our last speaker. You have the floor.
Yeah, so should I repeat my name and address? Dan Miletnik, 216 Graham Street. And thank you for that. And I just want to say, yeah, I guess in that vein, I feel like, again, I think that the areas of common ground, mental health for our students, and then safety, safely reopening. And I do feel like it requires us all to make some sacrifices. And I'm making sacrifices right now that I'm not going to detail, but everybody needs to make some sacrifices, right? And I know that, okay, and I get that, yeah, the CDC guidelines came out after the fact, and you were given these state guidelines that allowed you to go ahead with basketball. And so I'm not trying to, I don't think that my wife intended to second guess your decision there, Dr. Taylor, but I think that we can at least look at where we're at now and look at the guidelines we have now and say, what can we do now? And if shutting down the season is impossible, could we at least have all the players wear masks? Because they do that in some states. That's mandated in some states. And my friend is a coach in Minnesota. All his players wear masks. My daughter played soccer the whole season. She never took her mask off. So that's doable. Can we encourage athletes to get tested? You know, we were talking, you're saying it's difficult to incentivize testing. Here's a quick idea. What about doing, kids and adults both, we love raffles. What about doing a raffle, right? And every time you get tested, you get a ticket. Your test comes back negative, you get a second ticket, all right? And that's gonna promote that I'm going to be doing the physical distancing and everything to come up with a negative test. So I just feel like we need to do these sorts of things and come together here. And, you know, if shutting down the season is impossible, at least could we do these sorts of things to make it safer?
Dan, thank you very much. And another good idea. I saw Dr. Taylor taking notes about a raffle, so that the raffle, you were taking notes, I think.
I am. And I'm also, I should acknowledge that Keith Presti and I discussed the two ideas that Dan just brought up about athletes. In fact, I have already begun to spoke with coaches about requiring the kids to wear masks during games and practice as well. They're already wearing masks when they're on the bench. Boys basketball is confirmed. They've already put in place a mask wearing protocol at all times. Girls basketball will be doing the same, and I'll be spreading that word. So anyway, yeah, I'm taking notes, and I'm going to be looking at incentive programs. I'm also going to be looking into the potential for us to require athletes to be tested. I'm not sure if that's something that can be done, but I'm going to explore that possibility.
Darcy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm like a little taken aback by the no masks. I had no idea that was how this was going down. Is that like state guidance that's allowing teams to play against each other indoors with no mask?
Yes.
That's nuts.
I agree.
That's
I agree
absolutely
too.
nuts. I mean, one of my kids is participating in an indoor sport, but a sport where they can be distanced. They're all wearing masks the whole time. They're going from equipment to equipment. They sanitize their hands in between and their feet, for God's sake.
We're going to move forward since the competition season is in full swing now and require kids to wear masks during competition.
Yeah, no, I'm blown away that was happening at all.
That's the state guidelines. That's one of the problems we face.
Now, I mean, I have to point out that there are 33 teams in our conference, our athletic conference. 30 are playing, and 30 were playing before we were one of the three. None of the schools in the conference, as far as I know, have had to close because of intra-athlete infection. Same holds true for the county. There are, I believe, 26 county schools, and 24 of them, or 23 were before we got involved competing. I'm not aware of any schools that had to close as a result of athletic.
Right. Anne, did you want to say something?
Oh, did Darcy want to follow up?
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Did you have your hand raised? If not, I had a quick comment, Anne.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Monique. Oh, well, I'm sorry, Anne. I'm sorry.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Go ahead. That's all right.
No, I'll wait because I didn't have my hand up yet.
Go ahead, Anne.
Oh, yeah, no, just real quickly. I mean, I love the raffle idea. I really don't think we should be penalizing people for positive tests. I think there's enough sort of blame that get
Right.
drawn to people who show up positive. So I love Dan's idea, but let's not reward negative tests, please.
Thank you. Monique.
I guess my comment was just to Scott's last comment about schools, to his knowledge, not closing because of athletes testing positive. And I know a couple of the schools that I've worked in have had outbreaks among high school basketball players. So perhaps they haven't closed down the school necessarily, but you have the situation where you have this revolving door of classrooms being closed because of cases like this. And I do know in some of the instances that I've experienced where this has happened, not only because of the athletes, but I have seen that happen. Not necessarily closing the whole school, but you will see classrooms being affected.
Okay, are we ready to do our motions here? So where's Michelle? So Michelle, the curriculum, oh, there you are.
Yes, hi. I'd like to move items 1 through 3 on curriculum and instruction.
I'll second. Could we have a roll call, Linda, please?
Ms. Simorusti,
Yes.
Ms. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Gowan,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich,
Yes.
Mr. Woodward. Is he here?
You may have lost him. I don't see him. Hold on.
I don't see him either.
No, he's gone.
Did he leave the meeting? Does anyone know?
No, I don't know.
I didn't see him leave.
He's a long way away though, so who knows about the internet?
Okay.
Let's give him a second.
No, he's not on.
No, he isn't. Okay, I'm gonna move then yes, I'm gonna move the finance agenda. So it's items, I'm gonna move items 1 through 43 with number 40 modified as discussed. So 1 through 43.
Second.
A second.
Thank you. Linda, could we have the vote, please?
Ms. Simorusti,
Yes.
Ms. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Gowan,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich,
No on 43 and yes on the remainder.
Okay. So on to personnel. Ann, could you move the personnel and communications items?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to move 1 through 19. 19 is the read-in that Linda read for us.
I'll second. And Linda, could we have a vote now?
Ms. Simorusti,
Yes.
Ms. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Gowan,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich,
Yes.
And Darcy, could you move the policies?
Absolutely. I would like to move items 1 and 2.
We have a second.
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 Thank you. Linda, could we have a vote?
Ms. Simorusti,
Yes.
Ms. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Gowan,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich,
Yes.
Okay. So board liaison reports. Does anybody have a board liaison report? If you do, why don't you raise your hand and I'll call on you.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
The Ed Foundation did meet this past week. Scott, you actually have, I think do you not have some kind of interesting information that came out, you had worked with Michael to put together in terms of numbers and grants and that kind of a thing. Basically, the first portion of the meeting, we had the opportunity to update the foundation of all of the things that we've been talking about, basically. Save, this is 2.5 hours. We did that in about 30 minutes, but clearly without community comment. So but that was our portion of the meeting. But Scott, do you have,
Well,
we have some good numbers.
I'm going to have everybody wait with bated breath, pins and needles for my Thursday Taylor notes, because that's when I'm going to indicate the numbers. I'll tell everybody how many grants were. There were 27 foundation grants provided, but I'm not going to tell you how much money that amounts to. That you'll have to wait for.
Oh, well, now, okay, we're on pins and needles. Anyway, that was our meeting.
Thank you, Rob. Michelle, you had your hand up first.
Thank you. I just wanted to tell everyone that I was able to get our resolutions to the Middlesex County Board through Lucille Bloom, who is the secretary. And I don't know if it did anything, but shortly thereafter, there was good news about a decision that Governor Murphy had made. So just wanted to let everyone know that that was happening. And also, I'm not the liaison to the library any longer, but I did get an email as a resident, and they do have some programs that are non-academic and just, great fun. But they also have book clubs and other things. So I, as usual, just want to urge everyone to check that out.
Michelle, thank you. And I did hear from Lucille. Is it Lucille or Lucy? So she wrote, and then I got the message from the other county presidents, and they were going to pass resolutions around. But by then, one of the resolutions didn't make much sense. But I encouraged them to pass the resolution around about the vaccine, getting the teachers vaccinated. Darcy, you're welcome. Darcy, you had your hand up.
Yes. So for the New Jersey School Boards Association Delegate Assembly, the next one is coming up in May. We would have had to have had a resolution by March 11th. We don't have another meeting by then. And I don't know that we have anything particularly pressing, but for, there's 2 delegate assemblies a year. So there'll be another one in November. And, I thought our conversation around the pass-through money became a really interesting one. And that may be something that we want to, even dive into a little bit deeper and see if there's something that we want to do around that. Because quite honestly, the amount of money that's being, public tax dollars that are being moved through us to private schools at this point, I'm finding a bit preposterous. And the fact that we have to be the broker in between and, expend our administrators, already, pulled on time to do things. I mean, and not that we don't want to have good relationships with the, the private schools and everything, but this kind of takes it a little far. I'm not quite understanding why this is set up this way. So it may be something interesting to look at. And I don't know that a lot of people in the state really even understand what this setup is. So if, us doing a resolution around this does nothing other than educate other boards, that in and of itself may be worth it, in and of itself. So just something to think about.
Thank you, Darcy. It's a good idea. And we should do something along those lines, I think. Okay. I have no president's report. Does anyone have old business?
Well, if you don't mind, I will just bring up quickly that, I think it was great that we all came together last week so quickly to adopt that resolution. And, it did very quickly start moving around. It was passed in Wildwood and, it started moving around the state, which is great. But just today, I texted Dr. Taylor The Biden administration has already come out and said that they are not going to be granting waivers. So there may be something else that we need to do. I didn't fully read all of the guidance, but basically it was along the lines of you can shorten your test, you can postpone your test, we won't attach any of the accountability measures, but you're still going to give the tests. So that literally just came out today before the new Secretary of Education is even confirmed, before the Deputy Secretary of Education is even confirmed. So it's a little puzzling. So that should be interesting to watch.
These tests must be so important.
They're very special.
Well, not to mention, we really shouldn't vaccinate our teachers, which is just, that's, equally preposterous.
It's obscene.
Ridiculous. Anyway, thank you, Darcy, for that news. I'm not sure I want to thank you. It's terrible.
I would like a federal public comment time where I could get on and give my public comment for these kinds of decisions. Because this is really, these are the things that make it so hard to do our jobs and for Scott to do his job. And right, I mean, this, sure, apply for waivers. Sorry, no waiver for you. Like, it's just, everybody is, this whole year, no matter, poor Scott is just like head down, shaking his head.
Well, you know what? I don't mind suggesting out loud in public, any parent who wants to opt their kid out of this test, feel free. I'll support it 100% because
well, in the
I cannot imagine.
State hasn't even gotten their act together. Like the current freshmen and sophomores don't even have a path to graduation right now because those, that hasn't been solidified. It's a hot mess from top to bottom. Like everything is a hot mess. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely just want to say really quickly that it took 3 years. It took 3 years for the 1918 influenza, to kind of cycle through the population. And of course, we didn't have immunizations or whatever. But I would love to know what schools were doing during the 1918 flu. I mean, kids didn't stop learning. They just stopped going to school, right? I mean, I understand that we're tasked with giving kids an education, but that's, sitting and doing schoolwork is not the only thing that public schools do. That is not the complete education that the kids require. I'll get off the soapbox.
Okay, Anne, you had your hand up.
I'm shocked that we're going to lose more educational time. I mean, already our kids are going to school, 8 hours of in-person schooling a week. Instructional time in total is cut in half, almost a little bit less than half, and now we're going to spend like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and they had math tests. I want my kids to interact with their teachers.
I think the thing that makes me, the learning loss time has always been something that like gets my goat. But one of the things that I think a lot of parents don't realize is your kids' guidance counselors who could be focusing on what Dan was so rightly talking about, that all of our energy and effort should be going towards mental health right now. Those guidance counselors will have to be diverted to testing. And that just, no, like, no. So, I'm hoping against hope that this won't be the last word, that there will be such a pushback nationally that they will have to come back, they will have to go back on that. But we need to be prepared because maybe it won't, right? And this just puts Scott and his team in that prepare, don't prepare, don't prepare. Like what, like when state guidelines change and federal guidelines change and all these things are moving all the time, it's not easy for systems to pivot like that on a dime. It's frustrating. I'm frustrated.
Michelle.
Ask if anyone knows what happens, if we as a district write a resolution to opt out of the testing. Like Scott, I don't know if I could high five you in any way via Zoom, but I want to so bad for what you said about encouraging parents to do this, because I don't see how we're gaining anything. We're losing instructional time, we're losing financial resources, and we're losing a lot of personnel hours. It's a lose-lose.
If 70% of my students are home, how am I going to possibly implement a paper-based, well, what really is in some part a paper-based test for some, or a computerized test that's secure? It's not even doable. It's not going to happen. The technology is not even there. It's not going to happen. You're talking about, by the way, you're talking about doing this. Let's say they push it out to June, which is blasphemous because we know the kids are out. They're done in June, March, April, May. That's 3-4 months from now. They give us 6-7 months notice when we have to prepare for tests. It's not going to happen. If it does, whatever. It'd be as surreal as a once in a century pandemic.
We just went through this with the bar exam, you know, trying to give it remotely or not remotely. I mean, it was a disaster, just a disaster. So.
Okay, it's late, folks. Let's move on. I'm sorry.
Just thought I'd throw a grenade at 10 o'clock at night.
I had a shot on Saturday and I was kind of under the weather all day yesterday and part of the day today. So I'm starting to fade. So any other old or new business? Okay, so public comment. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. Anyone in the public wants to speak, please raise your hand, your virtual hand, and I'll call upon you. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.